Growing up, we are all taught very similar ideas when it comes to our futures. As a base standard, we are taught that our pasts directly affect the rest of our lives. We're told we have to do well in school so that we can get into a good university or college. We're told we have to go to university or college to get a good job and be successful in life. But then I ask, why are we only ever told the ways to be successful? Why are we never told any unconventional ways to be successful? Why do our entire futures depend so greatly on one of the most difficult and confusing times in our development? Well, I propose the idea that it does not. Because if that idea were true, I would not be standing here in front of you today. Right now in my life, I'm doing pretty good, if I do say so myself. I'm a full-time student, pushing myself by taking academics, languages, morning classes, all while maintaining nearly a 4.0 GPA. I got my first job at 14 years old, where I'm still employed and now the manager at 18 years old. I own my dream car, a bright yellow Volkswagen Beetle. I've accomplished so many of my wildest hopes and dreams, like writing my first book. I have friends who believe in me and support me in whatever I set my mind to that day. I am content with my life. I am a driven, independent young woman who is on track to do something incredible. But my life wasn't always so bright. In fact, the old me never dreamed I would be here today. In fact, the old me wasn't quite sure if I'd be alive today. I am the second oldest of 7 children in my family. My parents were unhappily married for 9 years before they divorced when I was around 6 years old. I grew up in a rundown place that is no home for anyone, especially not a child. And I have lived in poverty my entire life, and known that fact since the moment I understood the concept of money. I've always been a very smart kid. I've never really struggled in school, but for a while I struggled with life. During middle school, I began self-harming while I lived full-time with my father. I had become a shell of the lively girl I was. I pushed away all of the people around me, spending my lunch hours alone in bathroom stalls. And I'd also began abusing drugs. During that time in my life, I knew I wasn't myself. Something was wrong, but pot had given me an excuse to be moody and lazy and tired. I wasn't sleeping because I was depressed. I wasn't isolating myself because I was depressed. I could just blame it on being high. Drugs had also opened the door to a new group of people for me to spend my time with. Yes, they were not the most genuine friends, but suddenly now I wasn't alone anymore. But I was not happy. I did not have these friends because they loved my bubbly personality or my passion or my drive. We were friends because we had a common denominator. Later on in that chapter of my life, I was sexually assaulted by a man twice my age. He was a trusted person in my life, and he manipulated me when I was at my worst. At that time, I had never heard the word rape. I didn't know that I was a victim. All I had known was that a part of me was stolen. Something I hadn't wanted to give away was ripped from my crying hands. A few months later, that same man took his own life, and his death has been on my shoulders ever since. At 14 years old, I had hit my lowest low. Some people say once you hit rock bottom, there's no place to go but up. At that time, I had felt the only way to go up was to be buried 6 feet underground. I had never wanted to end my life more than then. But somehow I am now here, standing in front of all of you today, trying to inspire you. When I was completely drained of all motivation, when I had not an ounce of hope left in myself, and when I felt completely and utterly lost. I found a way to build myself back up, stronger than I was before. One summer, I had unwillingly went to a Bible camp to volunteer. I am in no way a religious person and have never been able to bring myself to believe that there was something out there with a plan for me. But nonetheless, I went to this Bible camp. And as I spent day in and day out there, I began to fall in love with the people and the space around me. As I introduced myself to people, I realized nobody here knew me. So why couldn't I be the person I wanted to be? Why couldn't I be bubbly? Why couldn't I have hope? Why couldn't I have a light in my eyes that said I wanted to live? And as time passed, I found that I was no longer the person I used to be. I'd also began noticing things about the people around me. At the late night fires where they all sang praise to their God, I began to wonder, if these people can so wholeheartedly believe in a God that has no physical presence, why can't I believe in myself? They have dedicated their lives to this person. Why can't I dedicate my life to myself? I didn't notice these changes in my life up until quite recently, but that's exactly what I had done. I was no longer working for others. I was working on myself for myself. I'd made some big changes in my life. I moved away from my father, I got my first job, I stopped abusing drugs, I made some goals, and I began imagining my future, the one I was certain I would never have. And I realized I began utilizing my past as a tool. I had this chance at the hero's story, the dramatic downfall of the hero, and when they're at their weakest, now faced with the decision of whether or not to give up or rise up, and I chose to rise up. But I didn't just use my past as a story. It became a symbol of strength. It became a beacon for the perseverance I showed, and it shines with the resiliency that I relied on. It exudes the power that I have as a person and that every other person possesses. Because the hero's story does not belong to me. That is our story. Too many people are being held back from their rise up because of what they once were. But we are not what we once were. We are not our failures or our mistakes. We are not our lowest of our lows. The horrors of our lives are not what defines us. And it's about time that someone told us that. It's about time that someone told us that our pasts are not all we will ever be. It's about time for someone to say that we can utilize our pasts to empower ourselves. Whether you were bullied in school for the color of your skin or your sexual orientation, whether you were a high school dropout or never had a chance to go to post-secondary, or even if you were an adult who went bankrupt and lost everything. It's time you are told you always have the chance to be something more. Use your past to show yourself how far you've come. Let your past be your greatest triumph because you fell to the bottom of your abyss and came back up from it. We have all come from different walks in life, all carrying our own stories and our own triumphs. Some of you may have stories like mine, some polar opposites, and every story in between. But we are all here today. We sit in this room together because we did something somewhere along the line that brought us all here. For me, it was giving myself a chance and not letting my story end at the hero's darkest moment. But now that we are all here, we need to teach a lesson. A lesson that we do not have to be what we once were. That it's never too late to change. That it's never too late to fight for your wildest dreams, and it's never too late to fight for yourself. Because I will go out kicking and screaming before I let my past define me. Because our pasts are not all we will ever be. They simply show us how far we've come and how far we will continue to go. Thank you.